Thank you so much for coming here today and joining us. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're gathered on here today, land of the Turrbal and the Yagala people. Extend my respects to all First Nations people, past, present and emerging, and further extend to any First Nations people in the room that we're joined by today. We're also joined by an incredible panel of incredible minds that work across various pillars of our industry, and really excited to be having this conversation today. But just set the table and introduce you to these incredible people that we have alongside me. We have Nikki Wishart here from QSIC. We also have the incredible Leah Harris from Spotify. We also have the amazing Rachel Kelly. I'm lucky enough to work alongside Rachel at Community Music. Rachel leads our publishing and sync division. Another round of applause for the incredible panel that we've got here today. And my name's Dan. I'm part of... Thank you. I'm lucky enough to be the general manager of Community Music, which is a distribution alternative for independent artists. I'm also an artist manager myself, and yeah, just how good's independence mean to you, or what is your definition of independence? I'll start with you, Nikki.
I think for me, one word that comes to mind is just, or a few words actually, drive and courage and ambition. I think all artists are obviously incredibly ambitious and incredibly driven on their project, but wanting to drive that and be independent and pave your own path is what comes to my mind when I think about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. Leah?
Okay, I'm going to go one word, and I think it's speed. I think being able to decide things for yourself at your time, on your own terms, and the speed in which things can change on your own term, I think that's pretty sick, being independent.
An amazing independent band, and also a film that I watched last night. Shout out Keanu Reeves. Rachel?
I would say creative control, empowerment, and ultimately being in control of your own destiny. I think that's really important for independent artists.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think, again, that's the beauty of it, right? There isn't one word to define it. And I guess the word I'd throw in there is malleability, the ability to be malleable, whether it's your artistry yourself or what you're creating, how you're going about creating it, the malleability for how you're releasing it, how you're projecting it out into the world. So, yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. Obviously, that can... Maybe the flip side of that is that feels quite daunting and overwhelming, and there's no way to clearly sort of lock in on it. But I'd like to think that sort of blank canvas kind of optionality is ultimately exciting and empowering, to your point. So yeah, really appreciate that. And if we were to start on the pre-release side of things, I'll throw to you, Nikki, to throw you under the bus and get us started here. But yeah, from a QSIC perspective, yeah, can you give us some examples to perhaps some of the ways, some of the tools, or folding in some of the kind of strategies or campaigns that you've worked on, and we'll go from there.
From a pre-release perspective, the way you could use a platform like QSIC is with your current catalogue and getting fans familiar with who you are, building up to that release. QSIC also service audio advertising, and we do a lot of audio messages. So whether it's getting in contact with us to see if you could promote the upcoming single, something that's, and then tack it onto a song that is already within the network, would be how I think QSIC would play into it. I think we probably play a bigger role post-release. So yeah, that would be where we would come into it then, yeah.
A bit the same, but I think when we're looking and listening to music, which comes into our back end when you pitch in for Spotify for artists, when we're listening to the track, cool, we hear the music, we make a decision about the music, but where we go onto your socials or go to a gig or trying to understand the community and the vision of your sound, and being really solid in that and being able to explain it, I think that really helps all the different platforms and people that are going to try and help get that audience to you. If I can explain music to another one of me within the Spotify universe and can tell them what they stand for and the type of audience that I think that they're going to try and grow, especially some people in the audience may be artists that haven't released before, or you've only released 1 or 2 singles. We don't have a lot of catalogue to go off. We don't have a lot of intel to go off. But if I can see that community off platform, then I can look at where we can find and build that on platform to find audience everywhere else.
Yeah, I love that. I was just thinking about the elevator pitch, and from a sync perspective, when I'm pitching an artist to a brand or a music supervisor, I want to give it to them in 30 seconds. Who's that artist? What do they stand for? And what's the story we're trying to tell here? And I think from a publishing perspective, we just want to have all those basic foundational admin things down, like the songs registered, no samples.
Pictures.
Yeah, all the things. Just getting all those foundational things down first, I think, is so important, because when it comes to sync and you've got a music supervisor who's got a deadline of 3 minutes and they don't want to find out about an uncleared sample or the song's not registered. So it's a little bit boring, but just making sure the admin's down pre-release, and engage your partners. If you have a publisher label, make sure they're all across what your release plan is. I think publishers do tend to get left out of the frame a little bit sometimes. So one of my favourite releases was Earth Boy. That record, when I was at Albert's, we had a team meeting with management, label, publisher, and we were all unified across, a little dig for unified there. We were across the release plan, and it worked really well. We all had momentum and worked together as a team, so that always works well.
I think one of the things that was not necessarily directly spoken to, but like the sort of consistency and all of that, is clarity. And I guess clarity in what is being delivered to each particular team, clarity in what your vision is and what you're wanting to communicate. Clarity then extends into the information that is being provided to. And, for example, like you sort of said, Nikki, that perhaps there's more... it's not so much more that you can do, but there's a lot that you can do sort of post-release necessarily than pre-release. So it's that clarity or sort of understanding of what is happening all over the place that might then inform where better to perhaps place a song, or sort of like a partner that would be more suitable based on the artist's overall sort of vision and beliefs and all sorts of things. And ultimately that comes back to clarity and going back to that key thing of the artists themselves, especially within an independent infrastructure. I guess not just clearly communicating, but having clarity themselves, having the control to determine exactly what it is that they're wanting to communicate. Then it's a matter of ensuring that is communicated, so that those either working on your behalf or the people that you're delivering to that are then kind of taking those messages, that information, all of those things internally, know exactly how you are wanting them to be communicated. But yeah, I don't know if there's a particular... it doesn't have to be a particular example, but kind of a way that sort of has symbiotically sort of flowed through, where there has been, some momentum cultivated, and then, or like a clear direction of a campaign that's then allowed you to sort of place it in a certain way, or sort of engage directly with a certain partner. And then, we can, again, sort of provide sort of, I think the tangible examples are really good. We can talk about the theory and sort of the process, which is obviously, it's, again, important to be clear on exactly what you're wanting to do and how you need to go about it. But having that sort of reference point of like, to then allow sort of not just clarity of sort of seeing something work, but then maybe that provides a bit of inspiration, invigoration, or allows you, for your particular artistry or your particular vision, to be like, okay, well, that's not necessarily relevant to me, but that's got the sort of wheels turning for what might be. But yeah, I know.
No, you can go first.
Wow, okay. Okay, thinking about release strategies as well, like from a pre-release stage, you've got your your visuals. We really want to see a clear visual statement so we can look at where we can show up in the app. I also think once you've released and you've had a few weeks, and we talked about this before around like the release moment is so important, but I think we should talk about the post-release momentum as well. But the release moment is really interesting to me because that's when we start to get audience data. And the audience data for me is interesting to play around with because you start looking at who your super fans are, who your previous active audience was, who your active audience is. You can find this in kind of any back end of any of your digital streaming platforms you might use. But the thing that I think about is like what decisions do I need to make about those audience segments? Am I going to double down on super fans and maybe use some of our tooling on Spotify like Showcase or Marquee and really try and activate a really active audience? Or am I looking for a more lean back audience that I might be going into recommendation sets? Maybe it also suits the type of song that you've made. So you might have more of a lean back song. It might not be your lead single. How might you approach that from a tooling perspective or an audience perspective? And then also thinking about how those audiences are sitting on other platforms. So you're looking at TikTok and looking at Instagram. How are those audiences coming back into Spotify? What kind of content and tools, maybe meta ads that is looking about broad awareness and driving to Spotify so that when someone's on Spotify or another streaming platform, they go, oh, cool, I did see that. I'm going to check that out. I get that imagery. I saw that imagery from that content into here. I think that's really interesting to think about. Is there anything from QSIC on that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the release point is where QSIC can play a really big part. I like to explain QSIC to artists as like a lot of micro billboards across a whole different bunch of store formats. Because with the customers that we do have, you've got shoppers coming in and out every day. They might even be touching 3 different brands in the same day that all fall under the QSIC banner. I think a really powerful stat from our perspective is we run the 7-Eleven US network. That's 12,000 stores. They've got 300 million shoppers in and out of their stores monthly. So it's a massive network of people that artists could be reaching. Some other examples of things that we do release is obviously we work with brands and we work closely with them. So connecting the artist and the brand together to push that release towards release day, whether it be working with the brand to have a listening party in store or to do a giveaway. Dan and I have actually worked on something recently for Ocean Alley for their new album that's coming up soon with Betty's Burgers, one of our clients. And I think there's really creative ways that QSIC can help push an artist and push their release and continue that momentum into the post-release era.
And I think you've touched on something sort of holistic there of like, we as an audience, we as a consumer of music or a discoverer of music, it's like it's happening, some ways it's happening actively, like we're actively seeking out new music or actively seeking out something, but it might be a bit more subliminal or passive, and it's about that discovery can still happen and then lead us to doing something that might engage with that, whether it's discovering it through going into a store and sort of something catching the ear, whether that's a Shazam that then leads to follow on a platform that then leads to saving the record or whatever it might be, and just really honing in on those different ways in which things can be discovered or engaged with.
I might jump in for 1 second. I think that you've touched on Shazam, which is really, really a powerful tool, especially for in-store. One story that we always like to tell at QSIC is the Meghan Trainor story, where people were Shazamming her songs in Starbucks, and then that's how she got picked up on radio in the US. Yeah. Which I think can be a really powerful tool if you were to have your song placed across a whole bunch of store networks. You've got a whole different range of demographics that are listening and finding out who you are and getting excited about your music. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I remember a few in-store moments where I was at Woolies on a Saturday afternoon and I heard Ishan's Universe Needs, and I was like, oh, it's really changed the energy of Woolies on a Saturday afternoon. It was nice and chill. And a couple of community events we've hosted, like in the last couple of months. For anyone who's in Melbourne, you might have been to either the Jackbots or Lucky Community Live event where we invite industry and partners and our own roster we're creating that community, I guess, and we're engaging those partners in Sydney. I'm based in Sydney, and we've got the Ryan's release coming up this year as well. So we hosted an event for them, and then we had their publisher, which is Sony, and we had music supervisors and all these people. And Jadon actually got up at that event and said these artists is a priority for us, and all these people in the room got to experience them live. So I think creating those moments are really special leading into a release. And one of my favourites, I was just talking with Dan earlier, it's when I was working on the Gautier record with Making Mirrors, his management team, John Watson and Melissa Chenery, had this great concept for a vivid live show, and the first time I heard that record was at the Opera House watching this incredible animation end to end, the whole album, and I still think of that when I hear that record. It just takes me back visually, so that really stands out over many years. So yeah.
No, 100%. And I think the key thing, if we sort of not so much bring it back, but obviously we're giving examples that to show, I guess, the breadth of what is possible, but it's also to convey that the pathway of discovery, the pathway of engagement, the pathway of consolidation, of momentum can happen at any point, at any time in the artist's journey. But this isn't only, QSIC, for example, or obviously everything Leah has spoken to on a Spotify standpoint and on a publishing and sync standpoint, like that is not, it's not like you only unlock the access to tap into discovery tools or the ability to reach people in different ways once you pass a certain threshold or once you have released a certain number of tracks.
Yeah, I think there's some really cool ways you can be building momentum like completely offline. And I'm seeing like really small artists create really cool communities in really weird venues. And then everyone's talking about it. They get access to the artists. I know some of the hardest thing about being an artist is deciding like when you're on and when you're off, and you have so many channels that you've got to be on, but creating small meetups, I think that's been the coolest thing I've seen this year. And then creating like merch and things around that meetup. Like there's one of the pop artists that we work with, she's created a whole line of journals that are her brand because her community loves to journal, and they all journal online together and they write physically in their journals as well. And that was something to like bring them together, and then you understand how that audience grows, and then people want to be a part of it. So it doesn't have to be online. It can be
that obviously would come
totally
back to
physical.
Yeah, and they would have had like, again, that's emulating or conveying like that particular vision of the artist, perhaps informed or sort of acknowledging as well like what their audience is engaging with or how they like to engage. Like that's a big thing as well, right? It's, you need to have a clear vision of what you want to convey, but also like listen to your audience in different ways. Like they might be more present or discovering on different platforms, or to your point, like you might not have been a journaler, but it turns out that your audience really like it. So perhaps there's an authentic way to acknowledge that and collaborate within that. But yeah, I don't know, Nikki, if you wanted to.
Oh, it just got me thinking when you're talking about things that aren't digital. I've seen a really exciting thing happening in Melbourne with some Melbourne artists just going out and busking on the streets of Melbourne. Yeah. And I've showed up once, and the vibe is incredible. So never underestimate, doing things that are maybe not on social media and don't cost any money. Yeah. Going out, building community, finding people who really like your music, and building that connection, because I think that connection is so valuable in keeping that fan for life.
Yeah, and from a developing artist perspective, if you're not comfortable in the digital spaces and more comfortable in whether it's playing shows or sort of in that sort of format, or it could go vice versa. Perhaps you are more comfortable in your home studio or within your house, and you're not necessarily as comfortable performing live. Whatever it is that is specific to you, I think you touched on something there. It's like, it might be, say if it is that you're busking on the streets of Melbourne, find a way that can be conveyed or sort of multi-purposed across multiple platforms. It's one interaction or one engagement, one moment that could spawn out sort of multiple, not just multiple pieces of content or multiple presence, but it's reaching those audiences that might not be on the street of Melbourne, but they might be scrolling past, or they might engage in a Discord community and want to engage with you there, or whatever it might be. And I think that comes back to again, the malleability and sort of like the breadth of what you can do, and then something like that, again, the clarity that can then lead to is going to positively impact what Rachel or your publishing and sync team can do, or what you could then sort of build on that within a platform like Spotify, or sort of that informs, whether an artist is resonating and how that could correlate to a brand or an in-store sort of opportunity. Has there... Oh, did you want to add something there, Nikki?
No.
Okay. I guess in building off that, I know we have given some examples here of particular strategies, or doesn't even... I think that's the thing as well, actually. Kind of just prompted myself there. I think it's important to, again, know what you're wanting to put forth, know what your art is, like, again, have that strategy. But then I also might see some artists and teams kind of squirming, like, you don't want to be too strategic and rigid, and then all of a sudden you're so planned out that you're kind of losing that, perhaps that spark or that authenticity, because you're so sort of focused on, making sure it's like perfectly sort of like within this clear strategy. So it is obviously a balance there, whether that is unconventional or unique sort of ideas for conveying your music or your artistry out. But if there's perhaps just, again, throwing to the great panel here, if there has, on top of what has already been mentioned, but particular sort of shout outs to a unique or unconventional strategy or idea that then allowed for something to be built off, that momentum being instigated and then leads to it being built on. Rach, I don't know if you want to start us off there.
I can't think of anything.
That's all right.
I think, looking at different platforms and how you're using them, but I think in the release, well, kind of the pre and into the release phase, I've been really interested in artists using kind of like Easter eggs and expression tools. So you're obviously very used to using Insta stories or TikTok or whatever, but on Spotify and even like other DSPs with shorts and that kind of thing, you have to really think about what content you're creating for each different platform. So one of the coolest things I saw was when Troye Sivan was releasing his album, he was hiding different clues to the names of his songs in the canvas on Spotify, and people were discovering that and then talking about it in different platforms as well. And I think being really thoughtful around what conversation you're having on what channel, and using clips and canvas and shorts and all those kind of things to make sure that music, that visual then goes into pressing play on that platform too. How can you create a bit of intrigue and mystery and a bit of talk? And it doesn't have to be that many people talking about it. Sometimes it can be cool that it's just a few of you really like mad super fans that discover it and then start talking on behalf of you as well, which I think is really cool. Some other tools that I think about, or even strategies, I mean, I'm such a big believer in having a plan and generally sticking to that plan, because someone like me on the receiving end of so many artists' plans, I love it when the plan's stuck to and I can plan for it and make sure that the editorial team knows when things are coming out and how we're going to make that music work in different places. But also don't be afraid to change the plan. If a song is like working and it's doing really well organically, or you're finding that you're getting really great placements on different playlists, whether that's editorial or UGC, like don't be afraid to go, oh, okay, maybe we can hang out here for a bit and we don't have to release in the next couple of weeks. We can use this momentum of this track and start thinking about maybe there's a few different tools where you're spending a couple of $100 just to try and keep growing that audience, whether it might be something like Showcase where you've already released and that's a little banner that comes up on Spotify, or it's more of like a meta ad driving into Spotify. Just like, I think, yeah, don't be afraid to kind of rethink where your money might be going. No one has heaps of money, so it's going, maybe I could just step back for a little second. Is there any time you've done that with your artists?
Well, I was going to say, I think you've touched on, not to just repeat the same words, but the reason it keeps coming off is there's commonality in these things. Like you've touched on examples there that are both encouraging malleability, but it's also clarity. So it's like, it's okay, to have this, need to have that clear plan originally that's being communicated to all the key teams, to repeat that point, like so everyone can go about to their particular partners. But then if, to Leah's point, if something is to happen, then you can be malleable with that. That can change your plan, whether it's on a release front, on a content front, but then make sure you're being clear with that malleability, like just that, yeah, Rach, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I just remembered a really good example of this. Sorry, I'm still waking up. Ocean Alley and that TikTok moment, Dan. Would you like to talk us through what happened when you were getting a bit of...
talking enough. Well, yeah, I guess, and the other thing you touched on there, Leah, was on the fan side of things. I know I mentioned earlier listening to your fans or being informed by them, how they're engaging, where they're engaging. You know, transparently, Ocean Alley are a band are the most comfortable on stage or in their rooms jamming music. They're not as comfortable being a content band or playing their content, creating content. So therefore, the authentic way to convey themselves in digital forums is to repurpose live or jamming or writing content. I'd say 90% of the content that has been rolled out over time for that band is of them performing in some way, shape or form. So that's the key thing in terms of the authenticity. And then from the fan side of things and malleability and all these words that are, you know, take a shot every time I say clarity. But that was a fan-driven moment, and it was cultivated by a presence of, as said, content from shows, from touring, from all these forums. And it goes back to what I mentioned before. If you're playing a show, again, it doesn't have to be, you know, and I'll tell you right now, it wasn't, you know, cameras and budget and all these things. A lot of the time it's raw, it's candid, it's intimate, it's phones and maybe a GoPro and the drum kit or whatever it might be that's relative to your particular setup. But that started, like the spark, if we talk about the spark and sort of the cultivation of the momentum, was fan-led, was fan-driven. Again, for those familiar with Ocean Alley, they're not sitting around speeding up their own songs, but a fan did that and people wanted to engage with it, and they authentically and positively acknowledged it. And, you know, then you, again, are malleable within that and looking to build on that. And then that's where, you know, it's not to say that various tools that we all sort of engage with aren't ways in which to light that spark, but a lot of the time these tools can be used to build on something that happens. But I think, again, it's not like this is a band that's been sort of grinding away and chipping away since they were still in there sort of jamming in their lounge rooms, but they were doing that sort of 15 years ago. So hopefully that's inspiration rather than like, fuck, so it's going to take 15 years to like, you know, light a spark on the platform. But, you know, I think it's somewhat inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to that point, that's and then clearly sort of articulating to all that team so then we can find ways to build on it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that one, Dan. I think that's a really good example when something happens, when that spark happens. And I'm going to quote John Butler here and shout out to Michael Chase, who I saw in the room. Love John Butler. He, you know, is one of these independent artists, and he says, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. And I think what Ocean Alley did when confidence was like exploding, they interacted with it in an authentic way, and it just really got traction. And you could say it's all about confidence, baby.
Well, you said it. But I would say, just to bring it back to the like half an hour ago when we sort of set this table, this back and forth middle, post-release, this all happened, that moment, that fan-driven moment happened 5.5 years after the song was released. And a big thing that is meant to be inspiring, that like you don't have to wait 5.5 years post-release to, you know, put a strategy in place. The point more so being a mantra, I guess, that I always yap on about. It's like new music is obviously super exciting, it's fresh, it's the unknown, so therefore that's why we need to communicate about it or have context within our pitch and communicating to all our teams. So it's not that necessarily it's a priority on new music, it's just that we probably just have to do more work to sort of set the table or sort of convey what it is. So that's why we sort of have these sort of formats in place. But also once a song's out, like, let's get started again, or like that again, going back to like the post-release, and that post-release is infinite, again, in an exciting way. It's not to say that, you know, you have to wake up next week and like, what's the new strategy? It's just a matter of new music is a form of, can be a form of discovery, but catalogue or sort of music post-release can both be discovered and rediscovered. And I think, again, this is one of many examples. We can go through many a realm of publishing and sync or sort of discovery on platform or sort of through forums like yours, Nikki, and in stores. But I think hopefully, I know we've sort of touched on a bunch of different things here, but it's examples of stuff and music at all points in their journey, but it can also start from release number one. And again, clearly cultivating that sort of fan experience and fan journey and building on that. Yeah, I don't know if anyone wanted to add further to that.
Well, I was really interested in like revenue beyond streaming. That's what attracted me to this panel, and I feel like you two have so much experience to share. So I would love to learn a bit more about how you guys think around releases and then where artists can find different revenue sources.
I think from a QSIC perspective, obviously we've mentioned the brands a little bit. I guess your song playing through QSIC is tracked by RSIC and then sent off. So the exact songs and the exact royalties get sent to the right people, which is the technical side of it. But then also working with the brands, brand partnerships, one of the things that we're so passionate about at QSIC is opening up new revenue streams for artists. So if that's connecting you with a brand that you can build and establish a brand partnership with, I think that's really exciting and potentially something that could be long-term if you guys have the right alignment. Yeah.
I think one of the really interesting opportunities is to think about your fans. If you can get your fans' email addresses and build a database and understand their demographic, what markets they're coming from, key territories and things like that. And then you can really lean into that when you pitch to brands. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And I think I've had a couple of really fortunate good luck moments with artists like San Cisco. There was a brand campaign for Vodafone quite early on in their trajectory, and it really helped them get that awareness. I think people were Shazamming off the TV, and I think those moments where it gained a lot of attention, and they went out and toured, and I think that people still think of Awkward as the Vodafone song in a way, so I was probably a little bit too successful in that recognition, but it is hard to get a sync at that perfect moment. It is like winning lottery, but I think what we're doing at Community is making sure we, get all those releases in. We're servicing out to music supervisors and letting them know ahead of the release date. So another big priority for us this year is the Teen Jesus record. Absolutely love this band. Their latest single, Mother, is just, as soon as I heard it, I was like, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be good for sync. So I love knowing when the release date is, and so that we can build those relationships and get those champions. Like, I think find those champions. Everyone has those super fans, whether they're a music supervisor or, and just really leaning into that in a way that's authentic as well to you as an artist.
And again, it's keep repeating these words, but Symbiotic's the other one. We got 3 examples of incredible people in different parts of the industry and how all of these things talked about can help each other, but everything you just mentioned is also going to assist and provide more clarity, information and data to help you get opportunities on the live side of things. It'll help your publicist if you've got one. It'll help sort of cultivate a bit of an understanding if you're looking to expand globally. And again, these things it's not to say that, go out and do all of the above. It's hopefully, again, just providing that that inspiration that this is possible. And a lot of the examples we've touched on are artists that obviously everyone has to start out and start their journey at a point in time. And that's why, it is, to have that sort of understanding of how you're wanting to communicate, be clear with that. And then that is only going to allow all these things to be able to be built on each other. But yeah, we're coming to the end of the conversation now. Before we sort of formally wrap, I don't know if just to sort of put a bow on what we've talked about here, if there's any one last thing that you haven't got in there.
I've got if you've heard me speak before or you've been in a meeting with me, the biggest thing I always say is make sure that you are growing your following on Spotify. It's the single biggest metric that we use. If a fan has followed you on Spotify, it gives us the data and the intent. It gives algorithms intent. It gives us different ways to target using our tools. You can utilize some of the more marquee and showcase as well, because it's going to go to those fans. So as much as you can encourage your audience or encourage your artists to get people to follow you on the Spotify platform, the harder it will work for you while you're asleep.
100%.
I think for me, it's just, obviously, I think it's been touched on quite a bit in this panel, which is like the cohesion as your artist project. you know, as curators at QSIC, we're looking at everything. We're looking at your Spotify account and your social media, and you get an understanding of who the artist is and where they're going with their music and where you could place them in terms of what brands and where they would fit. So I think that's really important from an artist's perspective, is just make sure that across all platforms you have that cohesion, you have a clear vision, and clarity about what you're trying to portray.
I'm going to zoom out from the song. It all comes back to the song for me in that initial creation. I like to think about how you want your audience to feel when they hear that song. If you can start to weave that into the creation process, I think that can be really impactful when it comes to releases that connect. You know, people are looking for a certain sentiment. They want to feel something. That's what brands are trying to tap into. I never want to tell people how to write music, so find a way that's authentic to you, but keep writing, keep creating, and do it in a way that is meaningful to you, and I think that will translate. I think the biggest thing is authenticity. Like, that is the number one thing I will finish on.
But I just wanted to wrap quick fire. If there has been a particular artist that you've seen in the Valley or outside of the Valley at a showcase or somewhere around that has just really sort of resonated or stood out. Yeah, Nikki.
I'm going to cheat, I've got two. I saw Rage Flower and also Flynn Gurry, both really, really amazing if you have a chance to see them. I'm not sure if they have showcases tonight, but they would be the ones that have stood out for me.
I am in my bad girl era with Mincy. Go and see her at La La Land, I think, tonight. And also the most beautiful serotonin boost with Corella last night, New Zealand roots reggae. I just had the best time. There's so many people on the stage that the keyboardist had to be on the ground. There's 9 people in that band. It was amazing. You should check them out.
Awesome. I actually have 3. I'm sorry, I was at so many showcases last night. Number 1 was BBT. Unbelievable. For anyone who was in that room, it was incredible. Kate was such a good vibe. There's a lot of dancing, a lot of good vibes, and saxophone. And also Red. I finished my night on that one. It was, yeah, really impressive. But we've got a few artists showcasing tonight, so I'll see you all out there in the Valley. And have fun.